Okay, I'm going to be reading the second half of chapter 13. I'll just start at the top of this page. We've already heard a little bit of this before. No big deal. Um, so Colonel Reed has come to the tavern, and he's telling them that it doesn't look good for Sam. And he has just said to Tim and his mother, then there's the fact that Sam comes from a Tory family. We're not really Tories, though, I said. Father wasn't. None of us are. That's not the way General Putnam's going to see it. But won't there be a trial, sir? I said. Oh, yes, Colonel Reed said. A regular court-martial. There will be a presiding justice and a board of officers acting as the jury. But we have to face the fact that the board will do whatever they think General Putnam wants. And if they decide that Putnam wants to make an example of somebody, they'll hang. They'll bend over backwards to satisfy him, regardless of the evidence. What can we do? Pray, Colonel Reed said. Actually, there are some others going to be tried at the same time. A butcher named Edward Jones from Ridgefield, who was caught spying for the British, another man for stealing shoes, and another for desertion, I think. So there's always hope that they'll get enough blood out of the others to let Sam go. His war record is good, and that'll help. The trial was set for February 6th, 3 weeks away. There was nothing to do but wait it out. I didn't know what to think. I didn't see how they could find Sam guilty. He'd fought for 3 years. He'd risked his life. How could they decide to punish him for something he hadn't done? It just didn't make sense. 2 or 3 times I went out to the encampment to try to see him, but they wouldn't let me. They had him locked up in a cabin they were using for a prison, but they wouldn't even tell me which one it was, because they were afraid I'd smuggle him a weapon or help him escape or something. After I'd been out there a couple of times, they realized who I was, so they wouldn't even let me into the encampment. I figured I could sneak in after dark if I had to. They'd cut down most of the trees around about for lumber and firewood, but there were rocks on the sides of the steep hill, which let down into the encampment, and I figured I could come down in their shadows. But there wasn't any use in trying until I knew where they'd hidden him, so I gave up for the moment and waited. I was beginning to get worried about Mother. She'd never been one for drinking much, just a glass of rum punch occasionally when she was chilled or sick, but she'd begun to take it more. Not that she was drunk all the time or anything like that, but sometimes I'd come upon her standing by herself with her eyes empty and staring and a little glass of rum in her hands. She'd hardly notice I was there until I spoke to her. It wasn't much, as I say, but she was changed, and it bothered me. Finally, February 6th came. Colonel Reed came in first thing in the morning. I'm going out to the encampment, he said. I'll bring back news tonight. All day long I was so nervous I couldn't eat. I couldn't sit still. I had to keep moving around, and I was glad when people came in wanting food or hot drinks so I could keep busy. Once 2 officers came in and ordered hot rum to warm up with. One of them said, Did you see any of the court-martial? No, the other said. Why bother? Putnam's determined to hang 'em all anyway. I shuddered, but I said nothing. It was after dark when Colonel Reed came in. He was tired. His shoulders were sagging, and his face was grim. He didn't have to say anything at all. I knew what had happened. Where's your mother? She's out back in the kitchen. I went and got her. She stood in the doorway saying nothing. Mrs. Meeker, I have bad news. They're going to execute Sam. She smiled politely. That isn't news, Colonel Reed. I've known that for 3 weeks. That was the story. The man who had been caught stealing shoes would get 100 lashes. The deserter would get 100 lashes. The butcher, Edward Jones, was to be hung. Sam Meeker, cattle thief, was to be shot. The executions would take place on a hill near the encampment on February 16th, a Tuesday. The Sunday before, there would be a compulsory church attendance. That means it's required. It surprised me that I didn't cry or faint or anything like that. I was numb and nervous and nothing more. And I began making plans. The first thing I did was to go see Colonel Parsons. He put me off twice because he knew what I was coming for, but as he was quartered next door to us, he knew he'd have to see me sooner or later, and finally he did. I can't help you, he said bluntly. The court-martial has decided, and that's the end of it. Then who can help me, sir? I demanded. He stared at me. General Putnam. Nobody but General Putnam. All right, then. Give me a note to him, sir. Shh, Siri, I'm not talking. Sorry. All right, then. Give me a note to him, sir. Why should I do that? He asked. Because Sam didn't do it. You know that's true. He stared at me. Sir? Sir? He put his head down in his hands. War is hard, boy. Sometimes we do a lot of things we don't want to do. A lot of very good men have been killed in this war, and all we can do is hope that it's been worth it. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe in the end we'll conclude that. But I don't think so. I think it will be worth it, despite the death and destruction. He raised his head again and looked at me. No, he said, I don't think that Sam stole those cows, but I can't prove it, and neither can you. Who knows? Maybe he did do it after all? Maybe he had some kind of arrangement with those other men so as to throw suspicion off himself? Sam would never have done that. He smacked his hand down on the desk. Watch how you address me, he snapped. I blushed. I'm sorry, sir. He put his hands behind his head and leaned back. Do you want to know what General Putnam is thinking? It's this. He's thinking that he can't win the war if he doesn't keep the people on his side. He's thinking that he can't keep the people on his side if the troops are running amok among the civilian population, raping the women, stealing cattle, burning houses. He's determined to scare the wits out of the troops to keep them in line. And he's thinking that it doesn't matter very much who he executes to do it. So many men have died. So many mothers have wept. So many brothers and sisters have cried. He is thinking that in the long run, if he executes somebody, he'll shorten the war and save more lives. It doesn't matter to him very much who he executes. One man's agony is like another's. One mother's tears are no wetter than anybody else's. And that's why he's going to have Sam shot. But Sam isn't guilty, sir. The court-martial says he was. But they're wrong. He sat silent. I waited. Then he said, Because I happen to believe you, I'm going to give you a letter to see General Putnam. But I am warning you right now that it won't do a bit of good. The one thing Putnam cannot do at this point is show clemency. If he is going to make his point with the troops, he can't start letting people off easily. So clemency means like he can't threaten one thing and then go back on it and not do it. He took up a piece of paper, wrote something on it swiftly, folded it and sealed it and addressed it to General Putnam. Then he gave it to me and I left running. I ran most of the way out to the encampment over the packed snow. The sky was cloudy. There would be snow and more snow. I arrived at the gate, my breath rasping in my throat so hard I couldn't speak. I handed my letter to the guard. He took it and he called over a soldier. Take this boy to General Putnam, he said. We walked up the encampment street past a long line of huts. They were identical, 100 of them with plumes of bluish smoke rising like a forest into the air. Soldiers were everywhere, cutting wood, cleaning things, drilling. Then we came to a house, bigger than the huts, but made of some kind of logs. The soldier handed my letter to the guard at the door. The guard took it inside, and in about 5 minutes he came back. Just wait, he said. I waited for half an hour, and then an hour, and then 2 hours. Officers went in and out, and I still waited. I got hungry, but I didn't dare leave to go in search of something to eat. It became 1 in the afternoon, and then a soldier came out and brought me in. General Putnam was sitting behind a rough trestle table they'd set up for him for a desk. There were papers neatly arranged in ink bottles, pens, sand for blotting the ink, and a stack of maps. He was a big man of about 60 with lots of white hair. He wore the continental uniform of buff and blue. He did not look kind. Meeker? Yes, sir. All right, let's have it. He scared me. His voice was hard and his eyes flashed. But I told him the story exactly as it had happened, and I finished by saying, Sam wouldn't steal our own cattle. He just wouldn't. He's been fighting for 3 years. He's been a good soldier. And he didn't do it, sir. I swear it. I know because... Enough, he said. My time's valuable. He took up a piece of paper and quickly wrote something on it. Then he said, I'll consider it, That'll be all." "Sir, can I see my brother?" He frowned at me. Then he shouted, "Sergeant, take this boy up to the stockade to see Sam Meeker. See that they stay 6 feet apart and pass nothing between them." "Thank you, sir," I said, and then I followed the guard out. The stockade was situated just at the bottom of the slope, which dropped down into the encampment. It was a wooden hut like the others, but surrounded on all sides by a picket fence to give the prisoners a place outdoors to walk around in. Guards were posted at every corner. There were some small holes cut in the fence, each about a foot square. The guard put his face to one of the holes and shouted, "Meeker, you've got a visitor here." Then he drew a line in the snow with his toe about 6 feet from the fence. "Stay behind that line," he said. Sam's face appeared at the hole. He was dirty and unshaven, and his hair was uncombed. "Timmy," he said. "How are you, Sam?" I said. "Oh, I'm all right for a man about to die." "Don't give up hope," I said. "I've just seen General Putnam. He said he'd consider your case." "Is that right?" he said. "Really?" "He said he would." "What did he actually say?" Sam said. "Does he believe I'm not guilty?" "I don't know," I said. "He didn't say." "You're a good boy, Tim." "Sam, how come they found you guilty?" "I guess I didn't score enough telling points," he said. "No, really?" The other men lied. They knew they were in for it right from the moment I spotted them in the training ground. I only saw one of them first, and I leveled the musket at him. But the other one was down on the ground in the shadows, gutting the cow, and he came up behind me and stuck his knife point against my back. So they got me. Then they bashed me around a little and took me in. Oh, they were smart. They had a story all worked out about hearing somebody shout, "Stop, thief!" and seeing me driving the cattle across the training ground and coming out to get me. And of course, I wasn't supposed to be at home anyway. I was supposed to be on duty at the Betts' house. So that went against me, and that was that. What else can we do, Sam? Pray, I guess. You'd better have Mother do that. The Lord is more likely to believe her than you, Tim. He grinned. I grinned back, but I felt all sick inside. Then the guard said, "Time's up, lad." "I'll try to get back to see you again, Sam," I said. "Say hello to Betsy for me," he said. "Yes." "And Mother," he said. "Yes," I said. "And I'll try to think up some more telling points for General Putnam, too." He grinned. "You're the best brother I've got, Tim." I tried to grin back. "I better be." "Come on, you," the guard said. So I waved goodbye and left. That's the end of the chapter.